Hey all, my name is P.A. Clark, as you already know, and in this episode we're talking about discounted aesthetic treatment. Now what do I mean by discounted aesthetic treatments? Well, there are many times that you can go online and you find packages for discounted rates, and what you're going to find is things similar to Groupon or what are the other discount services you've seen over there. There are plenty of them. What I will say is you get what you pay for. There are only very few companies that sell these products, which means that most of the medical offices within the United States are getting similar rates for the product, which means that one office cannot sell a product so expensive because they're not getting anything different other than what everyone else is getting. On the same side of that coin, an office cannot sell a product so little because you're getting the same thing. You must always purchase your medical procedures within a particular range. If you know doing full face Botox roughly runs between $500 and $700 from my experience. $500 is on the low end, $700 is on the higher end for the three areas: forehead, glabella, crow's feet. If an office or if a provider is charging $200, there's got to be something wrong. Same, if a provider is charging $1,000, there's got to be something wrong. So be very careful with what you're spending and what you are having done. Do not waste your money and do not go for cheap. You will always have a problem with cheap. Now, discounted aesthetic disorders can occur when individuals opt for cheaper or discounted procedures without thoroughly researching. Research. There are many medical providers who are injecting without the necessary experience and understanding of the product. Now, this does not mean that most of them know. But we all know that there are some individuals that don't even have a license and they are doing these procedures under the title of an esthetician. And I have had many patients tell me that their esthetician gave them Botox or their esthetician gave them dermal fillers. This is absolutely not right. It is insane. And if you're ever talking about safety in these procedures, why would you go to someone who does not have a medical degree, who does not have the insurance to make sure that if something happens to you that you're taken care of? Number two, one common mistake is choosing an inexperienced or unqualified practitioner who may lack the necessary skill and expertise to perform the procedure. So there's something called CMEs, continuing medical education. But beyond that, there are many training platforms that injectors can use to hone in on their skill and their technique so they can offer you the best possible treatment. If you go into a medical provider's office and you see a ton of licenses on the wall, accolades, certifications, if those certifications are 10 years old or 10 years beyond, at that point, these certifications tell you that that practitioner is capable of performing this procedure at that given time. Not necessarily 10 years later when the techniques have changed, the products have changed, and there's so much progress that has occurred. So always make sure that your medical provider is up to date with their certifications. Remember, medical aesthetics is not taught in medical school. It's not taught in schools as a general specialty. And if anyone ever learns medical aesthetic injectables while going to a medical school, it is a very short, small, narrow, most likely promotional, educational few hours. Second, another issue is cutting corners on materials and equipment. This is very important. Typically, if someone is working on the cheeks, for example, and they may not need one full syringe. They may need 2 or 3 syringes. But if your medical provider tells you that you require 2 syringes for your cheeks, try your best to accommodate and use those 2 syringes. Don't think, well, I'm going to do one syringe, it should be fine, and maybe it'll last half of the time. No. Sometimes one syringe will render no results. And this is because the tissue absorbs the product. What do I mean by that? Tissue is kind of porous to some degree, to simplify things. And therefore, when you inject in one particular area, you may see a high rise until the product settles. And once it settles, you may find it goes really flat. That means that you didn't have enough product. So if you're quoted 2 syringes or 3 syringes, make sure, number one, that that injector has the experience. And number 2, purchase those 2 or 3 syringes if you can. You will be happier by it. Discounted aesthetic disasters can happen when individuals prioritize cost over safety. 100%. If you're purchasing these products, Botox, dermal fillers, threads, and you're paying way below the typical market value, something is wrong. Now, this seems like common sense. But in these times, the economics of what we can spend and can't spend is very tangible. And we have to really budget to make sure we're able to afford that and to live our lives the way we want to. That doesn't mean that you cut corners on your Botox. Then you save for your Botox. You make sure that you have a budget in place. Typically, I tell my patients that they're going to spend roughly between $2,000 to $3,000 on average for aesthetic injectables. This may sound shocking to individuals who spend nothing on the features. However, when it comes to make, and I'm going to pull my crew in on this. Tell me, I have 3 individuals here behind the cameras. What is the average cost of your makeup, whether it's lipstick, blush, moisturizers, each month? The average cost per month, roughly.
Well, I buy quality stuff so it lasts longer than a month. So I would say my
lipstick, blush, makeup.
I mean, depends. I don't wear a lot of makeup, but I would say for the for me, average with treatment or moisturizer, makeup, all that, probably like $300.
Like $300, and you may do that twice or 3 times a year.
Yeah.
Right. So 300 times 3. This is about $1,000. Now you don't wear as much makeup and you don't use as much, which means that the individual who is going to wear more aesthetically pleasing products, whether it's for the business or for the leisure, they're going to spend 2 to 3 times as this, which is $2,000 to $3,000 on the low end. Mm-hmm. So when I tell patients, well, fillers and Botox, this is going to cost you roughly $3,000, $4,000. The only problem with that is that it comes in one shot. Mm-hmm. You have to pay it one time. But you're doing the same thing with your cosmetics, but you do it over a longer period of time. So you divide that up, it almost comes out similar unless you're overindulging.
Can we talk about, so when I talk to people and I ask them what areas do you get Botox and how much, we're always comparing prices and whatnot. They always know the amount of Botox they got. The units. And
okay.
That's crazy to me because I'm not a physician.
How can you possibly know the units?
Yeah.
Correct. So this is very
How do you know
easy.
that they actually put that much in there?
Yes, I'm so happy that you brought that up. Units, Botox units, depends upon the medical office and how they reconstitute or mix the product. Botulinum toxin or Botox comes in a powder, so you have to mix it. If you have to mix it, then your units are going to change depending on how you mix it. So medical office A, medical office B, they're going to have completely different ways of mixing the product, which means that their units are different. So you can't possibly say, I use 50 units of Botox, and you go to a second office and ask them for 50 units. It's not the same thing. It depends on how it's used. What I'm trying to say is you have to trust your medical provider because they're working on you. But you have to understand that if someone is telling you units, that is blind trust. And trust me, believe me when I tell you, you may or may not get what you're paying for. I work, was that the question? How do I do it?
Yeah.
Yes. The correct. So I work by the area. So if I'm treating your forehead or your glabella or your crow's feet, I am charging you for a good job. You are paying for a good job, period. You are not paying for 50 units, 100 units, 20 units because you don't know what a unit is.
Yeah, no idea.
I can show you a syringe and tell you this is 40 units. Then you tell the entire world that you're using 40 units. It may be true, it may be inaccurate, but what it will tell you is that if you pay for a good job, it doesn't matter how many units you're using, you're paying for a great job, period.
Plus, like, also, in society, we always think more is better. So someone's like, well, I got 100 units for this price. And like, oh, well, I only got 80 units for that price. Who's to say I need 100? Right. Or who's to say that's what I actually, you know, right. Maybe I don't want to be frozen. Maybe.
Right.
You know?
And this is one of the problems with capitalizing on medical care. Unfortunately, within the United States, medicine is a business. Medicine is not there to take care of you and make sure you have a long life. In the United States, medicine is a business, period. With that being said, you pay for what you get, but how do you know what you're getting? You do not. Therefore, the only thing you should be paying for is the result. Mm-hmm. Don't pay for the paint. Paint for the way the house looks. You pay for the results, period. Okay, moving on along.
Can I ask one more thing,
yes,
too?
Sure.
I hear about, like, sculpture being diluted.
Correct. So I like to make a distinction between dilute and reconstitute. There's a huge difference. When you dilute something, you're making it less in strength, less in concentration, less in active ability for that product to perform. When you reconstitute, you are creating something with the exact dosage necessary. For example, Botox comes 100 units per vial, Dysport comes 300 units per vial, and they're both powder form. When mixed or reconstituted correctly with the Botox, you will have 100 units of Botox. If you overmix that, then it's dilution. And that's the difference. So even medical professionals do not understand those two terms. Mixing and reconstitution are completely different terms. When you're paying $8 a unit, $10 a unit, $15 a unit, you're probably paying for the dilution most of the time. If one practice is competing with another practice based solely on units, that becomes a disservice to you, the consumer. So pay for your results, don't pay for units. This is not buying cookies or peanuts. Okay, and last, it is essential to prioritize safety and quality when considering any cosmetic procedure and not solely rely on discounts or low prices, as what we've been saying all along. If you're spending less money on your medical treatments, this is a serious thing. And I've seen many beautiful women with disastrous results where I have to correct those disasters. If I correct those disasters, you're paying twice as much. Correction is not free. And therefore, spend once, spend good, look great, pay for the results, and you'll be just fine. That is it for this episode. Hopefully you've gotten so much out of this episode. Please leave questions or comments on the bottom so I can respond to your questions. I definitely will respond to every single question that comes across my desk.